Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about a serious problem in Puerto Rico. The problem is the systematic effort by the ruling party to deny the right of the people to speak freely, to criticize their government openly, and to make their voices heard. I talked about student protests that have been met with violent resistance by the Puerto Rican police. I talked about closed meetings of the legislature and about the efforts to silence and destroy the local bar association. I was not the first to speak about it, and I could have said much more. This report, entitled Human Rights Crisis in Puerto Rico, First Amendment Under Siege, is searing. It details the complaints of students, legislature, the press, and the general public who were beaten and pepper sprayed by police. Female students who were treated with gross disrespect. The government's overreaction to demonstrations at the university and at the Capitol over budget cuts and layoffs. This next picture, this is the Capitol in San Juan, Puerto Rico, surrounded by riot police as people attempted to gain entrance to a same assembly as this one here today. And this is how they were met by the police. This is how the police dealt with protesters. The images of police tactics and behavior in these photos explain why our Department of Justice is investigating the Puerto Rican police for excessive force and unconstitutional searches as we speak today. How could you see these images and not speak out? And I was hardly the first to speak out about these matters, and I probably won't be the last. Here it is, the Daily Sun in Puerto Rico, sticks versus speech. As a member of Congress, it is more than my right. It is my obligation to speak out when fundamental freedoms are attacked. And what was the response to my free speech defending the right of the Puerto Rican people to be heard? It was to challenge my right to be heard here in the halls of Congress. The resident commissioner of Puerto Rico said in this very body, he is the only one authorized to speak about Puerto Rico at any time. This week, the Puerto Rican legislator debated a resolution of censure, yes, censure, condemning me for speaking out against the very abuses. A leading member of the ruling party even said, Gutierrez wasn't born in Puerto Rico. His kids weren't born in Puerto Rico. Gutierrez doesn't plan to die and be buried in Puerto Rico, so Gutierrez doesn't have the right to speak about Puerto Rico. Well, let me tell you something. If you see injustice anywhere, it is not only your right, but your duty to speak about it. We don't speak about injustice or apartheid or human rights abuses or the denial of rights of women in places around the world because we ourselves were born there. That'd be silly. Where we see injustice, we speak out because it is the right thing to do. Ironically, by questioning my right to speak out on behalf of free speech, they have made my point crystal clear. By challenging my free speech, they have amplified the words of my 5-minute speech more than if I had spoken for 5 hours. And it is their right. My critics have the right of free speech, even as they deny the same right to others. But I want them to understand this. Your efforts to silence me, just like your efforts to silence so many people in Puerto Rico who disagree with your government, will fail. Just as every effort to blockade progress only makes the march towards justice more powerful and swift. I may not be Puerto Rican enough for some people, but I know this. Nowhere on earth will you find a people harder to silence than Puerto Ricans. You won't locate my love for Puerto Rico on my birth certificate, or on my driver's license, or on my children's birth certificate, or any other piece of paper. My love for Puerto Rico is right here in my heart. A heart that beats with our history and our language and our heroes. A place where when I moved to as a teenager, people talked and argued and debated because we cared deeply about our island and its future. And that's still true today. And that freedom is still beating in the hearts of university students, working men and women, labor leaders, lawyers and environmentalists, and every person who believes in free speech. You will not silence them, and you will not silence me. Abraham Lincoln, a leader who valued freedom above all else, said, those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. It's good advice, and I hope the leaders of Puerto Rico take it. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the ACLU report titled Human Rights Crisis in Puerto Rico, First Amendment Under Siege be entered into the record. I further request unanimous consent that a statement by the President of the Service Employees International Union be entered into the record, and that the essay exposing the shadows of civil rights in Puerto Rico by the National Puerto Rican Coalition be also entered into the record without objection.
Without objection, so ordered.